we're recording.
All right, will you call the roll, please?
Ms. Capel?
I'm here.
Ms. McNabb?
Here.
Mr. O'Connell?
Here.
Ms. Ray?
Here.
Mr. McDade?
Here.
Mr. Norton? Mr. Anderson? And Ms. Stubblefield?
Here. All right, so we're gonna review the tree ordinance at this work session, and generally just look through it, ask questions. And if we wanna make any changes, that would be at a, what's the word, published notification meeting for next month. So, do you want to, how do you wanna
I've
attack this?
I put all the words that you have in front of you in the ordinance on the slideshow chronologically.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go through and, let's see.
You want us to ask questions as we go?
Please ask
Okay.
questions, please have suggestions. I'm gonna kind of point out instances where there's say discretion. So when you get a permit, any trimming or cutting over 6 inches, some do larger, some do none. I'll point out those, and then I'll point out other things that can be clarified, and then I'm gonna point out problems we're having in practice. So please stop me if you have any questions. Let me know.
Jenna, one more question. Are you also gonna speak to like any environmental topics along the way, where we talked about drainage before and like?
No, I wasn't really going to.
Okay.
Wasn't be specific. No, if you have anything. So what we'll do then, this is just to give you in-depth understanding of what the tree ordinance looks like. Next month, I've already advertised it for the October meeting. There'll be a public hearing and you can discuss it with specific recommendations to send back to council. This is Eric Lutz, our building official, and he's gonna jump in here too about trees if he has anything, or maybe answer questions that y'all might have. Ready? Purpose and intent, I think, I'm not gonna read this, I think everyone agrees we want to protect trees on Folly, we know, for the flooding and the environmental benefits and the canopy and the heat. So in the city of Folly Beach, if a limb is 6 inches in diameter, you have to get a permit. And that's pretty strict. There's some places, I think Charleston County, 24 inches of grand tree, anything under that, you don't even have to have a permit. But any removal and a trimming of 6 inch diameter branch, we require a permit.
Oh, I had a question
Okay.
in the 102 section, 166.0102. Number 2, so review for compliance with the standards of this section shall occur at the time of application for a site plan, minor subdivision, da-da-da-da. Would this apply to additions to home or just new construction?
Additions and new construction will come under site plan, yes, we require
Okay.
a site plan. Additions, renovations too. This is our list of protected trees. This predates me. I think it's a good list though. They consulted arborists about it. The only one I would point out is a laurel oak is mentioned. We protect a laurel oak and we don't protect a water oak. Those are kind of the same tree. I've been told this again is something from an arborist, and I have no knowledge of this. I just thought I would point that out.
Has a property owner challenged you on it and said, I don't have to get a permit for a white oak? Okay.
Is it a water oak or?
Water oak?
Water oak. And their lifespan of a water oak is about 80 years, and that's when they start to rot in the inside, and that's probably why they were not included here, because they are very easily become damaged and fall into people's houses around that time.
So would you recommend we not add it for that reason?
I think there'd be a lot of homeowners would have a problem.
Okay.
It's I'm not gonna say that word, but it's a I said it, sorry.
Wait, it just said, for the rest of these, I don't know the lifespan of these trees, that they're all well over 80 years.
Oh, I don't know that.
But they don't rot in the same way?
They don't rot and they're not as hazardous when they do get too old.
Okay. And then like just the criteria you use, arborists, do they give you any bullet points on do you know any of the bullet points they gave a long time ago when they did this? They're all natives, or
They're absolutely all natives. Mhm.
was that
And
just the main thing?
I think native, and they contribute to the canopy, and they have big root systems that help with flooding.
But if they don't have big root systems, like the palmettos, which are considered grasses,
I was gonna ask, how do y'all feel about taking that off? Because, I mean, we
because
obviously
past
not
a certain
tonight.
height, they,
So you're saying for their inclusion in here? You're questioning whether.
yes, I'm just wondering the difference between a tree and a grass at some point. Are we considering certain types of grasses trees?
Where do you see
I don't see palmetto.
The sable palmetto.
Sable palmetto, down towards the bottom.
Sable palm.
The sable palm
But
and
isn't that a
palmetto is
sable
different,
palm?
like the sable,
Yeah.
a palmetto is
Sable
the
palm
tree.
and cabbage palm or palm trees are all the same thing. They're the ones that we have out here along Center Street, the ones that are commonly in people's
But
yards.
do they have a strong root system?
No, they don't have a big root system, but we still do protect
It's
them.
incredibly strong.
Yeah.
I really thought the sable palm was.
That's a sago palm.
A sago palm,
That's-
okay.
Sago palm is ornamental.
Yes.
Yes.
You always see them right here next to people's porches, and they can, but they generally are trimmed and don't grow as tall.
Yeah.
They are not protected, they are not covered in this section. So
And
we're talking about palm trees, what you think of as a palm
I will
tree.
step out on a limb that I've been told that the sable palms that are not pruned the way we do on Center Street, not done, trimmed every year by the landscaper, provides incredible habitat for bats is a big one. And I think there's a few other things.
And those little green
Probably that too.
heron birds.
Yeah, they're beneficial to that.
And
They don't
just,
have-
That
I'm
might be why
clear.
they're on the list. I don't know. I'm just
Yeah,
speculating.
they're-
This doesn't apply to Dominion coming in to do what they need to do. Okay,
They have exceptions.
okay.
until
Whole
it's
other
happened.
topic.
And pine trees aren't included here at all, because I have a lot that's probably got 90% palm trees.
Correct.
I can
Pine
take them all
trees,
down?
they are-
Palms or pines?
Palm.
They are.
Pine.
Pine. They are not protected, but if they are over 12 inches, you would have to mitigate them.
You'd have to what?
Mitigate them.
Oh, what?
Replace them
We'll
with
talk about
something
that,
else.
either replacing them or paying into the city's tree fund, but you're allowed to take them down for no reason. So the protected means you have to have a reason, which we're gonna go through, one of the reasons that you can be allowed to take.
I
down
like nice
trees.
clear lots.
What's that?
Not kidding.
Well, that's what some people want.
Okay, so we all
And-
need to look at this list before we make recommendations, if anybody wants to change anything at the next meeting.
Mhm.
And the recommendations would be either take one off or replace it with something else or add to it or
I
just
don't have
approve it as is.
an opinion on this part of the ordinance.
Like what
I
of-
think this is, it's good and it's working. I would just point out on the right side there, DBH means, diameter at breast height, and that is 4.5 feet, that's about right here to my shoulder. And you measure the diameter of the tree, and if it's over 12 inches and it's this species, it's protected. Unless it's a live oak, 6 inches or bigger is protected.
So the magnolia says 12 DBH, that is 12 feet.
12 inches, this
At 4 feet.
diameter at this height.
At 4 feet,
So
okay.
4.5 feet height, 12 inches diameter at that 4.5 feet height. That's
To
how-
go back to one of Kristen's questions, I think, tell me if I'm wrong, but everything's on the table. Like, if they want to add fruit trees to that list, that's an option, or take away.
You wanna add native pine trees to this, somebody, actually, a resident suggested that.
No suggestion
It really
is a
could
bad one.
hurt
That's
you.
up
Yeah.
to you guys.
Any more questions here?
Nope, not for me.
All right, so this section is what allows for removal in emergencies or dangerous conditions. So for instance, at Second West, we had a tree that, remember a couple months ago, right, where the new stop sign is, that we noticed was in danger of falling off. And this gives us the authority to go out and remove that. Or if it were somebody, this was partially on private property and partially in the city's property. And so that's what this section covers.
So does that get mitigated too, if it's a city decision for safety purposes, or they get mitigated?
It doesn't, and we're working on a tree giveaway right now. We're doing our part to more than compensate for anything that we would take down. And we've actually talked about it, There was something that needed removal, I can't remember, and we were thinking, you know, we're gonna plant 4 trees for this one. So in practice, we do.
I
but
feel like
we're
with you
not-
at the, involved in it, we're probably doubling the efforts.
Everything- If we take down a tree, there's gonna be a lot more planted. Okay, this section is what prohibits removal. So this is retention of the protected trees. So the list that we saw earlier cannot be removed and cannot be cut first. A 6-inch branch cannot be cut without, cannot be removed at all. If they're protected, this says cannot be cut, removed, killed. Now, let me point out something here too. We talk about removal, and we don't really, well, that means removal, taking it off the property. We've had people try to move a tree. So they're saying, well, no, we didn't remove it because we just moved it from one place to the next. And generally with palm trees, that's when that comes up. So there is an opportunity there to allow that specifically.
What if it doesn't take?
I was gonna say, they don't, it is not 100% that they will take.
And then what
So-
happens?
That actually happened to me on James Allen. We had 2 really nice established palm trees, and they were great for a year and a half, and they both
We
died.
honestly
Same
don't
time.
have a tracking mechanism.
So if somebody wanted to really get rid of a tree, they could just say, we're gonna move it, and then it just doesn't take, and then they win?
It is really
Well,
expensive
if
to
that's
do.
what you were gonna choose to recommend.
Yeah, it doesn't say they can do that right now.
Right now, that is not allowed.
Right.
That's, I'm saying this is, people ask that often,
Uh-huh.
if they can.
So we should consider,
Moving it.
well,
But we do not currently have a tracking, like, if somebody moved it and it died 6 months later, we wouldn't know.
yeah, I don't know.
The
how
reality
that
is,
would
if you
be
plant a brand new
reasonable
tree,
to
we
ask
don't
them
track
to-
that either if it survived.
Right, I mean, if you're planning with new construction all around your yard, we don't check on it 2 years later to see if it's still there.
In theory, I guess just in theory, thinking out loud, don't see why we would prevent somebody from moving it to a different place on the property if they're keeping an established size tree, because otherwise they're taking it out and we're mitigating it with another one somewhere else.
Think about it.
Yeah.
But what are the chances that if you move a sizable tree that it's actually gonna survive, like that move, and then you're gonna end up
I can answer
having?
one question about that. When I first moved to Charleston, way before I worked for the city, I moved 10 trees off this island from a development down here that were given away to me. And I did it for a friend of mine, but I moved them out to his property on John's Island, and 9 out of the 10 survived to this day.
They did, okay, okay.
That's John's
okay.
Island.
They were
Some
massive
good
palm
land.
trees.
Right,
They were like 25, 30 feet long.
I don't know where we get that data, but it probably exists on the,
That's my own
the
experience.
right,
of moving.
the
right.
ability,
Well,
I would-
you know, what the livelihood is of a tree that's moved versus one that's planted fresh.
well, I think you just wanna be sure that they're not saying we're gonna move it and then it dies.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, and like Eric's saying, the tracking of that, I think is,
And you know, palm trees might be more resilient than
well, I
the other
think
ones
so,
on that list.
because
And
this
as
is
far
where
as
they, this is,
replanting and moving and kind of, that kind of-
yeah, I mean, this is their habitat, like.
And palm trees, we've seen planted
So
successfully.
maybe
I
it
don't think you're
should
gonna
just
transplant
be
a live oak.
like the palm
Yeah.
trees, maybe.
Yeah, like you're not gonna transplant a live oak. It's not
Yeah.
gonna live.
Right, right, but,
Dead end.
but if it's, if we open that door, then, you know, is that something that could happen,
If you
right?
open that door, I would allow it only for palm trees.
Only for
Yeah.
palm trees, right, so you have to be
Say
specific.
Only those can
Right.
be moved, any other removal is a flat out removal. You
Right.
can't try to take it somewhere else.
Right, okay.
But if you think we can find the data, just if it
Yeah.
exists on the
There's-
likelihood or survival,
I can call arborist too. I'll get some, so I'll get some information. Yeah, if you have questions like that I can't answer, you want further research, let me know, and I'll have that back for the next one too.
and on that note, just one last thing on that note, there's nothing that prevents anybody from doing it anyway now, just right now, it's not in there as a mitigation plan. Like you can't say, I met my requirements by moving it from here to there, but if I want to move a tree, I can still move a tree, is that right? Not really,
Not if it's
okay.
protected,
Okay,
not if it's protected, because that would, right now, moving is removing.
got
It's
it.
considered removing, because we don't allow moving.
Just on the protected
If
though.
it's an 11-inch palm tree, you can move it because it's not protected.
Yeah, that's, and anything not protected.
And before we move from that one, cutting, removal, or harm prohibited, what is everybody's opinion on tree limbs overhanging an existing roof line needing to be cut? Because
Insurance.
they're brushing, because insurance, because it's harmful if we have a storm and it's banging into the roof or the side of the house.
Mhm.
We do allow that right now based on the arborist letter. That's later on in the ordinance. If there's an arborist letter that comes to us along the perimeter for a hazard environment like that, we wouldn't allow it.
But an arborist has to do it if it's just like, hey, it's obviously touching my roof. I have to
We do
get
that on
it.
purpose, because we don't want to be.
You don't want them to do it
Yeah, we want
haphazardly.
the third party.
Yeah, anybody
Yeah.
can say, this is a hazard in my yard, I want to take down all my trees because they're all hazardous.
What if it's
Well-
something from your insurance company that says,
I
hey,
know.
we see
have accepted
this?
a letter from the insurance company.
Yeah.
That's
We
the
don't-
only
we don't
time
see
we've
them
had to
very
do it,
often, but we have.
insurance company.
Right.
I do remember at least one set situation.
Mhm. What about the ones hanging over the roads?
Well, it's DOT's responsibility, our job is to report
I
them.
love our king of
No, not the beautiful ones. I'm talking the ones that get
Ones
really
that
low and like hit the roof of your car.
We report them to DOT and we let them determine,
And that's
we
all-
ask them to
yeah.
keep
Yeah.
everything cut to 13 foot 6.
Yeah,
It's
that's what
pretty sporadic, but
Okay.
occasionally they come out here and they survey and we'll cut overhang them.
Yeah, I mean, some are great and then they get whacked day after day and then they get lower and lower and, yeah, okay.
And after heavy rains, you know, things get lower and
Yes,
lots of limbs, you know, seem to fall or,
right.
it's definitely a moving
You
target.
could have a tree trimming day.
That's why we have such a good canopy.
I like the canopy, I just don't like the crazy limbs.
Okay, so number 2 here is the utilities. This covers that question from earlier, giving them permission to cut.
We have no say so in that anyway, do
When you're not having to say that, they're gonna do what they want.
If you want power.
we? I mean,
Yeah.
we've all been down that path for years now.
This comes into play during a lot that's being subdivided. You have to have 12 trees per acre in a subdivision, which would come before y'all, and it just doesn't really happen that because we don't have big lots for this, where this would come into play. Okay, here's the meat. This is when, section C here is when a protected tree is allowed to be removed. This doesn't have anything to do with what you have to do after you remove it, just whether it can come out of the ground or not. Number 1, if it's diseased, high risk, or dying, and we require the arborist to certify that. Number 2, if it's on a single-family lot, and you're building a home, and it's in the footprint of the foundation of the home, the driveway, or the septic system.
Hey, Jenna, just on that, because the footprint can be to the left or the right, you know, the footprint on a lot can be shifted. Is there any discussion around that? If it happens to be right on the perimeter of the house is gonna be, is there discussion or is it just flat out? I
So
drew my
it
property.
says in here, least impactful to protected trees, which is the only direction that's kind of given in this. That really has no teeth. I don't know how I would ever enforce something like that.
This is what started us looking at the whole thing,
Right.
this right here. And I had said, could it just be worded that protected trees have to stay where they are unless it's, I don't know how to word it in an ordinance, but unless it's impossible to build otherwise?
I'm with you on the impossible part, right? That's where I was going with, if you've got
Yeah,
an
it's not
acre
like-
lot and you've got a 2,000 square foot house, it can move a little to the left or the right in a lot of occasions. It's where you drew it on the lot, can it actually be mitigated 5 feet that way?
It's-
But we
I
do
think-
have to consider our small lot sizes too in
Yes, for
the
sure.
setbacks, so I don't,
For sure.
this is what we all need to talk about is how, if we want it to be like that, to be like, you have to find a way, if it could just move a little, but I don't know how you'd word it to say, what is impossible, like I
Actually,
can't
yes.
build anything, or, you know?
Yeah, that was my question. Is there a history of overriding easement
What do you mean?
One more time?
setback lines on the side? So if you say you can move your lot to the left to protect the tree on the right, but moving it to the left then violates the left setback,
Right, so they
One
could go
over-
for a variance in
Okay.
that situation.
and you all,
And I would recommend, my staff report would be to recommend allowing it, so I
Okay.
think that would be a doable
I don't think we've
variance.
seen that happen in my time here. Not saying it couldn't.
yeah, I just was
Probably
curious if
should.
people did that or not.
It's just
Okay.
not
I
something
haven't
that
seen
comes up.
it, but it is doable.
Okay,
Mhm. But yeah, the least impactful to protect the trees is
Vague.
where it's vague, it doesn't mean anything, and if you wanted to tighten that up, that would be something to think about language and how to do that. And I'll think about that too.
Okay, but we have to encompass, instead of just single-family lots, Shouldn't it just apply to any lot of any kind?
Okay, so that's the next thing. So this is what started this, yes. It doesn't right now apply to, two-family lots. So under this ordinance, if you have a two-family, if you're an RTF and you want to build a home, you cannot take down any trees.
What
And so I
about
think-
multifamily or commercial? Do they?
Commercial cannot, yeah, commercial cannot either.
Okay.
But for this, for number two here, I think this was an oversight when they first passed it. What they really say was removal on residential lots. So that would give single-family homes and two-family homes the same treatment. And that's my suggestion, to add right there, removal on residential lots.
Is that also multifamily or not?
Yeah,
I don't-
we'd have to decide.
Up to a 4-family, like 4 units?
Or it could just
Something
be,
like
it could be like on the island when we have single family and two family, it could just cover those, or it could be multifamily in other places too.
Well, if we
But-
said residential, do we have a definition for that already?
Yes, it would be
Just
all
up to 2 families only?
single, two family, and multifamily residential.
Oh, okay.
So it does include multifamily.
If you were to change it to residential, it would, yes.
Okay.
Or you could specifically just say single and two family, and it would not apply to multifamily. Now, this is the footprint of the dwelling, the driveway, the septic system. This does not apply to accessory structures and pools. So if you want to put in a shed, right now, you cannot take down a tree to put in a shed.
Or a pool?
So just your main home is the only
Or a
thing
pool?
that's covered. Yeah,
Right now, no.
Good.
right now cannot put in a pool if you were to take down trees. And then let me get back up on, the number one here, disease, high risk or dying with the certified letter, you don't have to mitigate. We'll talk about what mitigation means later. But if you have a tree that is dying, you're not gonna be responsible for mitigating, number one. Number two, if you remove for your home, you will be responsible for mitigating those trees that you remove for your home. And then number three, hazardous trees, this is the same pretty much as number one. And what you were asking about, all of the hazardous, this would be number three, no mitigation would be required for that either.
Is there any limit now on the number of protected trees you can move from a lot?
One other thing I'd point out about the footprint, some jurisdictions say within 5 feet of the footprint or within 10 feet, but a certain distance. Some say if a tree is affecting the foundation, you have a tree any distance away that's affecting the foundation of the home. So that, I've allowed that before. Somebody's foundation was being threatened and the tree was 2 feet off of their foot. So that could be spelled out more clearly here.
Especially if it's affecting the structure of your house.
Right. Right, I
So
think
you would
that's-
recommend we add something
I would
like
recommend
that?
something like if it's affecting the foundation.
Under which
That would-
number?
We put in number 2. If it's healthy, not just the footprint, but around it, it's affecting the foundation.
So for number 2, we're looking at possibly adding in residential, taking out single family, right? And somehow work in if it's impacting the foundation, and then working on that wording, least impactful to protected trees, like some way to basically say, yes, but let's figure out how to do it so that you can keep the tree and still build your house, or without.
Keeping something important Jenna said, and I hope everybody understood it, but number 2, anything in that category still requires mitigation. So
Yeah.
the city's still getting something back. It may not
Yes.
be a healthy grand tree or an old beautiful tree, but we will get something back from that
Right.
property owner.
That's
Right.
equal overall, right?
Overall, right.
Yeah, so it
Right.
might be 3 trees.
So it's
So
not,
to mitigate
number 2 is
one,
not a
but-
freebie, you know, it just says, hey, I'm gonna put my house here.
Yeah.
They do have to commit to give something back.
How often does this come up?
A lot.
A lot.
What's
Which
what do you
part?
mean by this?
Which-
Well, like, you know, if somebody, maybe if it's a new home, I guess it's probably, does it come up more often?
Mhm.
A whole lot to clear.
Yeah, if it's a, tear down and rebuild, it may not,
Because they're
the trees
just
were already-
keeping it in that
putting
same
it kind of in the
footprint,
same
right,
place. Mhm.
right. And then if it's a cleared lot, then it's kind of not,
Mhm.
If it's empty. But
If it's
It does
empty-
come up a good bit more than you would think.
like,
Especially
what's an
someone's-
like how?
I'd
Well,
say like
additions
half of our building, permits have some kind of tree mitigation.
Some kind of tree,
What do you say
right,
about
Yeah,
half? I'd say at least half.
yeah,
Comes up a lot.
Whether it's a renovation or an add-on or a new
tear
build or,
down
yeah,
or-
tear down.
right.
Redoing yours.
Sometimes it might be one tree on a already developed lot. Occasionally, we ran into that on Arctic where it was a couple oak trees at the front of the property.
Right.
They wanted to just wipe them out.
So then, as it's written right now, do they have to get a variance so that they can move forward?
In what situation?
You
Like-
have to get permit.
Like, as it's written at this moment, like if somebody needs to move their septic tank or something like that, and there's a tree in the way?
No
Would-
variance required.
Not,
They're
okay.
allowed under this.
Okay, okay,
If somebody had to rebuild their drain field somewhere else, they would be
Right.
allowed to take in a protected tree in it right now without any, at staff level permission.
okay.
But they have to mitigate.
Yes,
If it's-
yes.
And you have to get a permit to do that, right?
And
You
yes,
get a
it's
permit
still-
and have to mitigate.
So there's a review process that it has to go through.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so this is the important slide.
I'm sorry, Jen, one more thing. So that, we've spent a lot of time on number 2. So after all these notes, are you gonna recommend like language to us that you think would capture all that in there?
Right now, I'm gonna,
I said a lot.
I'll work on language for the foundation, for the residential. What do y'all think, residential or just residential, or just single family, two family?
I think
I
residential.
think residential.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanna build a home.
Yeah,
Okay, residential, and then I'll think about the least impactful to protect the trees, if we can figure out something to do that and impossible to build. So I don't know how you,
We don't think about it very often, but didn't this come up recently on a commercial lot on Center Street?
yes, somebody tried to, wanted to put a parking lot in a commercial lot, and they will not be able to take down trees, they would have to get a variance for that. So that's something to consider too. If there's a commercial lot and somebody wants to build, can they be allowed the same, number 2, give them the permission to build in the footprint of their commercial
I
building?
don't know why it would be any different for them than.
Yeah, I don't think
Okay, so then, we would, here's how I would do it, number 2, removal and residential, and then I would add the same language for commercial as in number 4.
Of course, they have to have a parking lot, right? If it's new, or parking of some kind.
This is just for upwell parking lot, the whole lot is gonna be a parking lot in
Oh.
this situation. Okay, so let's clarify then, if that person came back and just wanted to put in a parking lot, they would still not be allowed to put in trees, but if they wanted to build a building, then they could remove in the footprint of that building. That's kind of what,
Unless they could otherwise build it without doing so.
we'll put that in there too. Yeah, well, I'll look around and see if anybody else has any stronger language.
Okay, because I'm thinking, like, maybe it says of the same square footage, or whatever their plan is that they initially bring, as long as,
I mean, I'm thinking something like if they're asking to remove trees, we make a arborist certified, or not an architect certify that this was
the only.
the only place it could build to take these trees down, that there was no way.
Plus, they still have to mitigate.
Plus they still have to mitigate,
Yeah.
but there was no way to move the same square footage this way a little bit and save any of the trees. That's what's coming to me.
Yeah,
off the top of my
it's
head right now.
hard to word it.
Yeah.
And you could make their mitigation stronger if you want. So instead of 1 for 1, you could do 10 to 1. That's another, you guys can put
that's.
in any of these situations.
And if you think of anything before next month too, just send me an email and if you have something else, another suggestion or another question, I can do some research on anything we don't talk about today. Okay, so non-protected trees. This means the species that are not protected, so pine trees in this case of any size, and then the protected trees that aren't big enough to be protected. So an 11-inch magnolia is a non-protected tree. 12-inch magnolia protected, 11-inch not. So if it's not protected, you can take it down for any reason. but you have to mitigate.
So people just have to reach out to you guys and just let you know, hey, I'm taking this down, but
They
I've
still have to
measured
get a
it.
permit, and that's.
Oh, you have to get a
that's
permit.
usually how we catch things.
You have
Okay.
permit, if it's,
Most people like you guys and everybody else will let us know if they see a tree work going on, and we'll investigate it, make sure that it's approved.
we get that a lot too. Trees being taken down and somebody calls and says, do they have permission? And we go out immediately and look at it.
I bet it's not everybody, unless it's a really big established tree. I bet there's a lot of people who don't even realize you can't. Like, people do just chopping down things in their backyard and
Yeah.
making a view and.
Some people think that every tree is protected,
Yeah.
and then, yeah, some people have no idea that this is an ordinance.
Thankfully, most of the local tree companies in the Charleston area are pretty familiar with tree restrictions on everywhere they work, and so most of the time they know to check it.
I bet most of them experienced an Eric Lutz stop work order before.
You know, if it's just if somebody wants to clear their own lot on the weekend, you know, those are the ones that we don't always catch, right away.
And back to your question, Paula, so they would submit, if it's an addition, they're gonna submit a site plan showing where those trees are. They're gonna have a letter from the arborist. We ask for a lot of information before trees get taken down.
Okay.
And it's pretty tough.
I
Go
know.
back and forth all the time.
So this is, so mitigation means either replanting and or paying into the city's tree fund. So there's a calculation to determine the number of inches of new trees that you would need, and you either replant that number or you do another calculation and figure out, you get estimates to figure out how much it would cost to replant that number. I have a worksheet, because this is so complicated, I created this worksheet to give to people. Wait, which one?
I was surprised you have to mitigate for non-protected trees too.
Over 12 inches.
Over 12 inches.
Non-protected, over 12
Okay.
inches. So if somebody is having trouble with this and asking a lot of questions, I'll send them this. There's the list of what's protected, and then here you have your options. You can replace or you can pay, and then this is how you figure out how much you need, how much you're responsible for. So this is just wait, I'm not ready for this yet. After the next slide, we'll come back to this. Okay, so mitigation is replanting and or paint. And that's determined by the number of inches that you remove, the DBH, the size that you're removing at 4.5 feet.
And to be clear, you said replanting, you mean replacing, right? Not moving from one place to the
Right.
other, right?
Correct,
Yeah,
a
obviously.
new tree that was not in your yard before. And can y'all, oh, y'all can still see that, okay. So this is replacement. This, number 2, allows an accepted shade tree species as identified by the South Carolina Forestry Commission. There used to be a list on the Forestry Commission's website that gave the, what was acceptable and their determination of an accepted shade tree. That list does not exist anymore. And they have guidance on their website about what could be shade in different situations or in different locations, but it's not an easy go-to list. And so what we've been substituting is the protected list, just to encourage more of the trees that are protected, to be planted. So that's something to look at.
I'm surprised Clemson doesn't have that. Such harbor, they put out everything from out of state.
I think we should come up with our own based on somewhere like, the extension would be very helpful in that. And we say, here are the 10 trees that you can replant if you're taking down a non-protected tree. So I think that would be my suggestion. We'll come up with a list instead of saying, as identified in this list that doesn't exist.
So that we'll have to do by the next meeting as well, right? Okay.
So Eve, there's no fine for taking out a healthy tree?
There's $500 a tree.
Pardon?
$500 per tree.
That's it?
Plus
Right.
mitigation.
Let's, should probably look it up in that. What,
We already
how
got
much
this.
money?
$500, I mean,
Where'd you see the no fine?
I mean, when it, in the cases recently that we've had, it's been removal of many trees. And we've had a $6,000 fine, $4,000 fine. But yeah, it is $500 per tree, so if you think it should be more, you can recommend that too.
I do.
Oh, I sure do, yeah. I mean,
I mean, when you
that's
think
not-
about it, I mean,
Not that much to
people
pay.
people that are buying and building houses, they're $500 isn't that big of a deal.
Especially, and even if they did 5 of them.
I mean,
not
it's
really
like
that big.
the cost of cabinet inserts. I mean,
That's true.
huh?
That's true, yeah, and, yeah, I'm just thinking, if I wanted to build something right here and all I had to pay was $500 and.
Per tree, I
give
mean,
you guys a couple
even if you take
trees,
out 12,
Yeah,
it's only
In the
$6,000.
In the grand scheme of it all, it's not much, right? I mean, it would be for someone who's.
Spending $700,000 to build a house and it's gonna cost me $6,000 to get rid of the trees.
So it's funny because I think there's, for some people, like a builder, just add an extra $5,000 or $6,000 to the total bill, it's really no big deal. But the average Joe Blow resident that lives here that didn't realize a $500 fine is pretty, I mean, it's fair, but a much stiffer one for an accident, it's truly
Yeah,
an
but
accident, you
the-
just can't, you can't validate it was an accident or not really.
yeah,
you know?
but a tree with a 12-inch diameter is not a small tree, and it seems common sense, you at least should ask, do I need to
There are
get
jurisdictions
permission, or?
that, they have, and we're talking about two different things here now, the fine and the, what you have to replant. But there are jurisdictions that, do it by the inch, so it's I think it's Beaufort now, just changed to $100 an inch. So
kinda
if you
like
take down a 43.
Of height?
Pardon me?
Diameter.
Diameter, the DBH is,
Connell get mean over there.
so 43 inch, a grand oak tree that's 43 inches around will be $4,300 to remove in Beaufort.
It's kind of interesting.
But it's a penalty, not something you would just.
I can't remember, I think in Beaufort it's for the removal itself, it's $4,300. That's how they determine their mitigation is
The
based on the
cost
inch.
of the removal, okay, but not
But
a
that's not the
punishment
fine.
for removing it without
I don't know. off
a
the top of my
permit.
head.
Also, if somebody does remove it, if you went that route, even if they've had it hauled off and you find out after you get back to work on Monday that it's gone, how do you even
So we had
validate?
this case, somebody took out a whole bunch of trees, that were not listed on, they had a permit to build a house, and they had trees that they were given permission to take out, and they took out about 25 more. I went to Google Maps, printed it out real big, I drew arrows and, I drew numbers, I said, I count here this many trees, and I labeled them each, and I said, if you disagree or have a way to prove otherwise, this is what we're saying was removed in that case.
And we're gonna assume they're over 12 inches because you don't
Yeah.
know we proved otherwise.
Right, right. Mhm.
That would be the case where they pay $6,000.
That was the
Yep.
$6,000.
After they'd already paid 12 for mitigation at the start of the job.
Right.
They did $12,000 worth of legitimate mitigation early on.
And then the replacement, they have to do it within 12 months of the renovation.
How do y'all track that?
Most people do it at the time of planting, at the time of the closeout, once the house is finished, they've done their landscaping too. And if not, then we'll come back to it later. It's not many people that we have to go
That
chase
is
that
one
down.
that we talked about. We wouldn't have any heartburn if you guys changed it.
And making it a shorter time period, right? Like you don't have
Or no time period, just
Or no
before
time
the job's
period.
closed out.
Well, when
Oh,
someone
before they
finishes
get the final sign off on it. you don't-
Yeah, the final sign off is the closeout, and at the time of closeout, they could say, yeah, here's our 12 trees and where we planted them.
Yeah, we definitely should do.
I agree.
Where does it say that in here, but it says you have a year to
Probably.
replace?
Number 2,
Number 2.
B, replanting period. Replacement trees shall be provided within 12 months.
I like the idea of shortening the time, just let you guys
Okay.
check
A lot better
box.
for us on
Oh, you're on the next.
Is there
the
a,
function of the street.
Nice.
I guess for the gang, is there a scenario where it's not a good idea? I mean, if I don't know every scenario out there, is there a reason why it might not be?
I could probably think of a couple, I can't off the top of my head, but I can envision that that could be the case, in which case you can get staff permission to give, more time in exceptional circumstances that staff determines is an exception.
Do you have to put that in the ordinance though?
What?
I put y'all back in the.
Okay.
Kristen, did you say, I didn't hear this, did you say, because some people may not know where they want to put them?
No, I didn't say that. I was just saying I might not know every scenario that's out there, so I wanted to see what the other side could be of, have y'all heard of a situation where they really needed a year? Is there any
People
reason not
build
to show?
houses and landscaping is an afterthought, and they sometimes also run out of money. And so that's when those companies will be asking for more time.
And I feel like that's what I think, before you run out of money, you might wanna go ahead and put the trees up, but I just don't know every
To me,
scenario.
like, that's the cost of, part of the cost of construction.
I agree.
You have to do it anyway.
But I could see that you might want more time if you want to live there and see how the sun goes across your house and what you're gonna plant on the.
But,
Oh, well, but, I mean, but so it'll live, so like, if,
Yeah.
you know, fruit trees, or if it's on the north side or the south side or whatever, like with the sun, and it changes seasonally.
Yeah, there's also certain trees you don't want to plant at certain times.
At certain times of the year, right, so it could be, you know, with, I don't know if that creates more work, or if they, you know, if they just planting the same tree that's an easy one that can live anywhere, that's different, but if, you know, if they're thinking, putting some thought into it, you hate to rush that, I guess, but maybe they need to just ask for permission, you know, say, hey, this is what I'm thinking, we need more time to.
I don't
And
like
I
it
think
just
that-
cause it's like giving them an inch and they'll take a mile.
Well,
To
there's
be
that,
like, well, I wanna
right.
think about the perfect sun, like, we know.
I agree.
I guess
Maybe
I
where
just-
the
I've
sun
killed
rises
so many
and sets.
plants.
I also feel like if you're building a house or
And you're
doing
not
something.
necessarily putting them on your own lot, right? If you don't
Yes.
have room?
There's an option in here somewhere that allows you to put on public property. I've never seen that. Everybody puts them back on their
Okay.
own.
From there, yeah.
And meanwhile, typically you're working with a landscaper who's thought about the shade and.
Well, yeah,
plants and
but
whatever.
usually, yes.
I guess for staff, you guys have to manage this at the end of the day. What do you feel is the right, is it 3
Well,
months?
what we
What do you
do,
get
what we
off to?
started doing is, getting strict about when they submit the site plan for the house, show us where you're gonna replant.
Yeah.
Like, you already have an idea that you're gonna put these 10 right here. Then later at closeout, we go and say, okay, did you put those there? If not, let's mark it, we have a year to go with that. That's how it works right now.
Well, if they're having to do that, then, yeah, just, I would agree that you need to have it before your final,
I'll close out.
yeah.
I feel like they're talking to the designer, the architect, what you want your house, how it's positioned, where the shade is, where it's not, where the sun comes in, where your windows are. I feel like that's
Yeah.
probably part of the conversation. Or could be,
All right, this,
I don't
we
know.
might have some more discussion about this particular one, but, I think I understand what you're asking. Okay, and the last page is the payment options. So if a tree requires mitigation, this is how you calculate how much to pay into the city's tree fund. And it requires 2 written quotes. I want to point out that people are getting quotes from a business that they never intend to buy these trees. There's just I don't know, maybe a fairness issue there. And we require, payment at the time of the application. So this, when they get their permit, they have to pay the tree fund, amount.
Okay, so
Okay,
you,
so now I'm gonna give you the worksheet to show how that mitigation works out. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
thanks, Eric. So do you think in lieu of that whole statement A there, that maybe it should be a different system, so you're not, like you were saying, they're getting quotes from companies they never gonna buy from?
I think this would be a good opportunity to do it by inch, to charge by inch instead of by replacement cost for two written quotes for cost of replacement trees. Like we just said, you're taking down,
But this isn't, this is mitigation where they can't replant, right?
right, this is their paying.
This is not a fine.
Mhm. This is if they're taking down a 30-inch live oak, how do you
At $100
determine how
an
much
inch.
they have to pay? Right now, they have to go get 2 different quotes from 2 different
Mhm.
companies for a live oak.
Okay,
and then average that out. So
Okay.
a way to simplify that would say, just look at the 30 inches and not require
Mm-hmm.
the quotes.
Yeah, I like that
Gives
idea.
you the cost per inch, no matter what the tree is.
Kind of eliminates the gray area.
And
Yeah.
there's a lot of times where they replanting one for one, they might not, that tree might not be in stock, it might not be recommended necessarily. So yeah, this one does cause a little bit of,
Okay.
we could use some clarification.
Do you see a notable difference in this person got these two quotes and it, for the same two trees, or same tree, and this person here got the two quotes for the same tree, and there's a pretty big difference
Yes.
between? Yeah, this is why the inch thing is a good idea, just standardize it.
There are some, we've gotten some crazy quotes that were so expensive, I couldn't believe the person gave us that without shopping around more.
It was probably like punitive, like stop wasting my time.
Well, we'll take
But,
it.
hey, that's a great idea, I think.
Okay, so per inch for removal. Is it an idea of cost?
I was just about to say that's, I don't know how
Beaufort's is
often.
100 per inch?
Beaufort is 100 per inch, I can look around and see if anybody else does per inch.
Actually,
I think they were the first people, because they were in the newspaper for it, that's why I heard about that. But I'll look around,
How's that working out for them?
I can call.
I'd also be interested where they got the number. It's really just, bless you, the
Yeah, 'cause
amount.
any number is just like pulling one out of the air.
Right, the arbitrary, or
Yeah.
or they see how much the average tree costs and build in a little bit of buffer for inflation?
Mhm.
Yeah, and
Cost
this is
of it.
people needing to remove it because it's in the footprint of their house. They're not trying to remove them without permission or whatnot, so maybe not way over.
I'll look around, and I'll call around
Okay.
and get some answers. All right. This is the tree worksheet that I created when people are having questions and trying to do the right thing. I mean, a lot of people are trying to do what they're required to do. So on the top left here, this is an example I just made of it. These are the trees that you have in your yard right there. All of those are protected. So you go line by line. If it's a live oak between 6 and 12 inches, then you have to replace one for one. If it's any tree, protected or non-protected, if it's between 13 and 18 inches, you have to replace the DBH at one for one. At 19 inches, that's where it increases. If you're taking down a tree between 19 and 24 inches, you have to replace 1.5 times 1.5 of what you took out. And then if it's 25 inches or more, you have to double the number of inches that you took out when you replace them. So that's the worksheet I give them. There's also a flow chart. That's just what we went over just right now. If the tree's healthy, if it's not healthy, excuse me, and then you have an arborist saying that, then you take it out. It just has to be permitted. If it is healthy, oh my goodness, this is dangerous. If it is healthy, then you ask if it's protected. If it is protected and it's in the footprint of the home, you have to, that's when you include your plan, that's what we said, plans to replant or pay into the tree fund, which is what we're doing right now at the time of the application, one of those. If it's not in your footprint, if it's an accessory structure or a pool, you can't remove it. If it's not protected and it's larger than 12 inches, you can remove it with a permit. If it's not larger than 12 inches, you just need a permit to remove it. And if it's over 12 inches, then same thing, you have to mitigate with either plans or a payment. So that's all I have.
Okay.
Are there any more questions?
Can we go back to the math again?
So is this where, like, if we were to use Beaufort's number of $100, 6 inches is $600, 10 inches
If you're
is...
gonna use Beaufort, you would add up this number right here and multiply by 10.
Oh, because you're doing
And
all
it's
of
because
it.
those are the trees that are over, either protected or over 12 inches that need mitigation, so 20, 40, 60, 80, that's 120 something inches right there. And this is a very reasonable, example for somebody. Okay, so have you else about the tree ordinance between now and, next month, let me know, and I'll work on the language for the things that I think y'all have come to some agreement with to propose for next month.
I do have another
Can we
question on
get
the
that
tree
in the
thing.
flow chart?
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I think I heard a number of how much is in the tree fund now. And just, I'm interested exactly how, it's there, how does it get disseminated, how do we decide when? I don't care to have a budget, it's just sitting there, they're not getting used, the trees getting taken down.
So I introduced this last month. We had this tree fund since 2012 or 2013, and they created the fund but never described how it should be used. And so this is now what city council has passed this is how we can use this money. Instead of having to go before city council every time we want to spend something out of the tree fund, that's how it had to happen before. This gives staff the ability to do this. I think last time y'all asked how much was in the tree fund, it was about $60,000. We're at 100 now.
Oh my
We've
God.
had some- Even more. I
I thought it was 30, is it?
Yes, people
So
are
is it-
taking down trees this month.
I guess my concern is it's not getting used, so the purpose is to mitigate trees and put more trees back on the island,
Yes.
one for one at least, and so it's not getting used, we got,
Well, I have a tree giveaway planned in October, and I'm gonna try to get as many trees on this island that I can with that, both on the parks department, going around and looking at places in our parks that have the potential to hold more trees. And then, we're gonna advertise it that anybody can come pick up a free tree from the city of Folly Beach that will be native, that will help with water, flooding and canopy, and we have total roots and shoots about what
Yeah.
specifically we need here for a barrier island.
I need
And
interviews.
so-
Will you have a list of those trees?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
There'll be
just,
some education before we get to the point of giving them away too. 'cause we
And that's
won't-
coming up this October?
yes.
Like in 1 month?
Yes.
you should get the word
And
out.
we've
One
had
month.
grant programs before that you had to have a certain income limit, or you can only do this many, or you're only giving this much. We're just giving
I
away.
was gonna say,
Just
first
buy
come,
them and
first
say,
served.
here, plant.
Is there,
In
like-
October.
It might be
Okay.
November, late
Okay.
October.
can you do it, where, I know you're already looking at it, but can we get it in the Sandspur and just kinda
absolutely.
get it announced out there too? I
Absolutely.
don't know when the Sandspur deadline is, but.
September 18th. probably.
Next question too is there a variety of sizes and ages?
Yes.
Just, I'm thinking more established.
There's gonna be a variety of sizes, so there will be bushes, like button bush is not a tree, but we're allowing it because it's very, very good for pollinators and wildlife.
Yep.
And then different kinds, different types of, there's oak, I can't remember off the top of my head, but they've recommended 6 or 8 different types.
Wait a minute, you're giving them away in October. But the Sandspur needs their,
That's what I was thinking.
It'll be published on October
Well,
1st.
yeah, I mean,
We'll be
okay.
getting
Can we get it in?
September 18th is,
yeah, we're at what date right now? Yeah, that'll work. That'll work.
All right. We have 6
Okay.
minutes before we're gonna start again, so.
We wrapping this
Take a
one?
break real quick.